Hi, this is Ken Landau, and welcome to Law You Should Know. Today we'll be talking about whistleblowers and the law, and our guest is Michael McCray, who's given a lot of thought and knows a lot about problems in this area. Michael, welcome to Law You Should Know.
Thanks, Ken, for having me on your show.
What made you involved and concerned about whistleblowers?
Well, Ken, I got involved with whistleblowers when I became one. I'm originally from a small town in Pine Bluff, Arkansas, and it's in the Arkansas River Delta, and I tell people the soil is rich, but the people are poor. And I wound up getting an opportunity to go to Washington, D.C. when my governor ran for president, and I got to work for the White House. And so my background is also in law and in finance, and I got to work for the Clinton administration on the Federal Empowerment Zone programs. I think New York actually received a few of those funds maybe 25 years ago. At the time, it was the largest federal appropriation for community development programs really since Lyndon Johnson and the Great Society programs. So in a nutshell, I was working for the federal government, helping to rebuild communities just like my hometown. So I really had found my dream job. And during that process, I discovered that there was a grant that was being funded for $40 million to a nonprofit that I knew didn't have the capacity to handle the funds. The reason I knew is because I was on the review team that was reviewing the applications. So I asked a simple question in staff meeting, and that was really, should we give $40 million to a nonprofit that can't handle it? And that really started my whistleblower journey, because most people don't intentionally blow the whistle. All it takes is for you to ask the wrong question at the wrong time, and you become a threat to the system, and the managers retaliate. And so ultimately, I wound up blowing the whistle on this $40 million. It was involved with a nonprofit in Mississippi that at the time, Secretary of Agriculture, Mike Espy, was a former congressman.
Listen, I want to have time to cover a lot of other topics with you, and you know, the information about whistleblowers, so we can come back to that if time permits a little bit later.
Okay. Well, long story short, I blew the whistle, and I've become an advocate for it.
Okay, that's good to know. Now, what technically is the definition of whistleblower?
Well, Ken, you know, there's a lot of different statutes and that involve whistleblowing, so it's a very piecemeal, it's very fragmented.
What does the word kind of mean, the general, definition?
The general definition of whistleblower is a person who witnesses some type of wrongdoing or malfeasance on the job, or with a federal contractor, and either reports it to the authorities or perhaps the media. So it's somebody who sees something wrong and tries to fix it.
And it's someone who sees something and says something, whether it's in the context of an office or whatever's going on. They have a conscience. They think there's something going wrong.
Well, Ken, we in the whistleblower community, we're very clear that all disclosures. I mean, if you're leaking classified information, that you may or may not be a whistleblower, or if you are a co-conspirator. For instance, Sammy the Bull Gravone was not a whistleblower to John Gotti. So we really embrace the people who have rightful information, see something wrong, and try to fix the system.
And they're not really doing wrongdoing themselves, or at least they're confessing about their own wrongdoing at the same time.
Right, that's correct.
And they are public servants. They are, it's a good cause and a good vocation.
Right. Well, it's interesting. If you ask the question about where the whistleblowers come from, there was the largest longitudinal study on whistleblowers was done by a researcher out of Virginia Tech University. Dr. Rothschild, interviewed like 400 whistleblowers. And what she found is that the largest number of whistleblowers come out of the public sector, the government. The second largest comes out of the nonprofit arena, and then the smallest number comes from corporate America. And in general, it's because people in the federal government feel like they have a public trust. So when I worked for USDA, I didn't just work for my boss. I also felt like I worked for the American people. And that was one of the things that drove me, was that I was here working on a program that was designed to rebuild the devastated communities like my hometown. And so for me, the money, $40 million, didn't represent a program, or it didn't represent a political chip. it represented people. And so that was one of the things that made me speak up, and of course it changed my life forever.
Okay.
But in general, whistleblowers are people who see something wrong and try to fix it.
And who have a conscience also.
Mm-hmm.
And now, is there something about the personality of a whistleblower?
Oh, that is an excellent question, Ken. I've asked myself that a lot because, during my work, after I blew the whistle at USDA, I started to work with other whistleblowers, and there's a community of us. It's one of the largest whistleblower coalitions. It's called MISC, the Make It Safe Coalition. And it's interesting because, in one sense, some whistleblowers can be a little bit eccentric. And I've asked myself, were they eccentric before they blew the whistle, or did blowing the whistle cause the retaliation and the harassment? And really, I believe that all whistleblowers, probably most whistleblowers, suffer from a form of PTSD. Did the struggle, did the harassment cause them to change their behavior? But in general, most whistleblowers the whistleblowers that I know have a very strong-willed. They don't, they don't necessarily care much for societal conventions. They're willing to stand on their own and chart their own path.
And sometimes they might be loners, or they're a do-gooder.
There's the concept of beautiful people with beautiful souls, and that's what I tell a lot of people about the whistleblowers that I know. But some of them are more pragmatic. I wish more would be more strategic, because a lot of times, there are whistleblowers that'll tell the truth, devil may care, burn the house down, that I don't necessarily think is always helpful. And a large part of being able to survive your whistleblower journey is your ability to defeat isolation and make friends and build coalitions. That's one of the reasons that we have the Whistleblower Summit for Civil and Human Rights, is a place for whistleblowers to gather and to support each other.
And does it do them any good to them to mention something to the person that's doing the creating the problem, or possibly doing something illegal?
Well, most whistleblowers, most people that witness something wrong, of the ones that take any action whatsoever, most of them will go to their supervisors and go maybe one level up in their chain of command. And so there's roughly, I think the stats are 47% of Americans will see something illegal or malfeasance or wrongdoing on the job. But ultimately, only 3% have the gumption to go all the way to become a whistleblower and report the wrongdoing to Congress or the media.
Are they better off doing that, or is there also, can they report it to an attorney general, a district attorney's office, or some other investigator or oversight agency?
Yeah, they can. That's legitimate. That's a legitimate avenue to blow the whistle. It's an interesting dialogue in the community, because there's some people that will recommend blowing the whistle anonymously. I personally am not really a proponent of that, for the simple reason is that at the end of the day, there are no secrets. The protection that you're trying to achieve anonymously, you're never going to get that. With the exception of if you fall under the False Claims Act, where you have to file first a sealed complaint.
Could you try to make the complaint anonymously, but if it doesn't lead to action, then come out?
Well, what usually happens in that case, Ken, is that once you make certain disclosures, the system is they're gonna track you down. They're gonna figure out who you are, and that's also one of the pitfalls when companies have these whistleblower hotlines or 1-800 numbers for you to report wrongdoing. A lot of times, that they're just a way to identify whistleblowers. And that's my point, is that most of the benefits that people try to achieve by blowing the whistle anonymously, I think they wind up more formidable and more protected if they're able to develop a bit of notoriety or celebrity by making it a public. It's not just the whistleblower against the bad company. They bring it to the public. They may bring public awareness.
But some people may not be comfortable with that, or being in the limelight. They just want to do the right thing and report it, and let the appropriate parties investigate it further.
Right. No, I do. Again, that's why I said it's a lively debate and a discussion point. But I do understand and respect that perspective.
And some people may not want to jeopardize their privacy or their career or their friendships, et cetera, and do that unless it's something major and they're prepared to accept the consequences.
Right. Well, the thing is, that's a false hope, though. Well, or at least my experience has been, even the ones who try to remain anonymous, usually the system will find out and then they'll suffer the retaliation and the harassment just as well.
But it might be something small. It may not be a large-scale improper behavior by a big institution.
The thing about it is that large and small, in the federal government, you're required to report, malfeasance and theft, even of a small variety. And the reason is that essentially what you're reporting is a breach in internal control. So if you're working with, this nonprofit and you find out that somebody, quote unquote, was pilfering petty cash, during the investigation of the petty cash, they may discover that, no, it was a much bigger fraud. So a lot of times, whether it's large or small, the whistleblower is still going to face retaliation. Okay.
And why are many whistleblowers minorities or women?
Well, the reason is that, again, there's a larger proportion of minorities going back to the stat I gave you, that more whistleblowers come from the federal government. There is a larger index of minorities working in the federal government than the general population. And then also, because whistleblowing covers any violation of federal law or regulations, even personnel actions can be stated as a whistleblower claim or is a form of whistleblowing. So prohibited personnel actions, employment discrimination. These things, because they affect the federal workforce, there is a broader, percentage-wise, a broader pool of minority whistleblowers.
And what about, do whistleblowers generally come from the lower level employee, or sometimes it's a manager that sees something going on below or on their level or above them?
Well, I think the more interesting question, Ken, is, are the whistleblowers the good employees or the bad employees? Because a lot of times, companies and agencies will try to make you think that Joe was a bad employee and therefore he blew the whistle. He either blew the whistle out of spite or he blew the whistle because he wasn't performing well. But what the research shows is that whistleblowers are actually your better employees. They're people that are comfortable enough in their job that they actually think that if they make a report or they go to their supervisor, that something's going to happen and then things are going to change. So this is not the guy who's already, 1 foot on one foot in the grave, the other foot on the banana peel. These are a lot of times your star employees that wind up trying to fix something that they see is wrong and believe can be fixed. And then it starts this slippery slope, and then they fall into their whistleblower journey.
Okay. We have to take a short break now. When we return, we'll continue our discussion of whistleblowers. You're listening to Law You Should Know on 90.3 WHPC, the voice of Nassau Community College, and also over the internet at nccradio.org. We'll be back in a moment.
This portion of programming on WHPC is brought to you on behalf of the Nassau County Bar Association, who wants you to know about ADR, Alternate Dispute Resolution, which can help you avoid costly, lengthy, and uncertain litigation in court. By resolving disputes through mediation or arbitration, it gives you control over who decides your case. A mediator helps all parties to reach an agreement they can live with, or an arbitrator selected by the parties hears and decides the case. Your attorney can still represent you, but you control who decides your case. ADR is faster and less stressful than fighting in court, and it is a great way to resolve divorce, employment, or commercial disputes. ADR is now offered through the Nassau County Bar Association. Find out more about how ADR can help resolve your dispute by calling 516-747-4070 or visit nassaubar.org.
Once again, we continue with Law You Should Know. From the Mineola Law Firm of Shane, Dox, Denise, Corker, and Sauer, here is attorney Kenneth J. Landau.
Hi, this is Ken Landau, and welcome back to Law You Should Know. We're talking about whistleblowers and the law, and our guest is a whistleblower advocate, and a person who's likes to convey information about that, Michael McCray. Michael, I guess you also have an